However, when the news got to Mr. Samuel, her father, he urged Esther to comply and accept the old man. "The gods have spoken," he said. "You must fall in love with this man to break the curse." Reluctantly, Esther agreed, forcing herself to accept the situation. Marriage introduction followed, and Esther was engaged to marry Chief John, who was even older than Esther's father. As fate would have it, Bright returned from abroad the same week the engagement took place. This is an African folktale story of a beautiful young girl who was subjected to marrying an old man in order to break a curse. Please kindly watch till the end. In the lively town of Umuagu, a beautiful and calm neighborhood in the southeastern region of Nigeria, life was vibrant and full of charm. Umuagu is a well-organized town that operates like a big city with various amenities in close proximity. Their marketplace is so clean with lock-up shops and looks quite different from the other rural village markets. The villagers, known for their communal spirit and colorful attires, often go about their various daily activities in a peaceful manner. In this lively setting was a very beautiful girl named Esther and a handsome young boy named Bright. They were childhood friends who grew up together. Esther was the only child of Mr. Samuel and Josephine, while Bright was the only child of a widower, Mr. John, who never remarried after the demise of his wife when Bright was still very little. Mr. John raised Bright as a single parent and made sure he had a good life like every other kid of his age. Meanwhile, Mr. Samuel, a civil servant, was married to Josephine, a school teacher, and they both did their best to raise Esther well. Bright and Esther were inseparable while growing up, playing together in the neighborhood and showing each other so much love as young kids. They attended the same school and shared their dreams for the future. Esther, as a very beautiful young girl, was admired by so many young boys in her school, but she chose Bright over every other boy, and they became an item most people talked about. As they grew into teenagers, their feelings deepened, and their bond became a source of envy and admiration in the neighborhood, and everyone believed they were destined for each other. One fateful day, Bright saw a love letter with Esther written by another boy from the neighborhood. He was so furious that he took the letter from her. He angrily accused Esther of being involved with the boy who wrote the letter, but Esther tried to explain to him that it was a harmless letter. She assured him that she loves only him and could not be with any other boy. Out of youthful exorbitance, powered by the love and feelings they both shared, Bright's insecurity led them to do the unthinkable. In the bid to secure their relationship, Bright brought out a paper and put together a written covenant between him and Esther, promising never to leave each other till death. They sealed the covenant with blood oath by pricking their fingers and dropping the blood mix on the written covenant, vowing never to lose their virginity to any other until their wedding night. What they did seemed simple and meaningless, but it was believed to hold mystical powers, often used in rituals to seal unbreakable and irrevocable covenants. Such oath-taking was practiced in the land of Umuagu for generations, but was known to be done by adults who truly understood the deep meaning of such exercise, and was not meant for young and naive teenagers. As their blood mingled on the paper, the air around them seemed to hum with an otherworldly presence, sealing their pact in a way no mortal could undo. Then Bright declared, "We promise to remain pure for each other. We will marry as virgins, and only then will we become one and share intimate moment." Esther nodded, her eyes glistening with both determination and innocence. They sealed their vow with a prayer, promising severe consequences if either broke the oath. For years, they honored their promise. Though their affection grew so strong, they maintained their boundaries, cherishing their bond but respecting the sanctity of their agreement to remain virgins until they are married. But fate had other plans. Esther's father was transferred to another branch of the company he worked for, and her family relocated to a distant city due to her father's work, and despite Bright and Esther's promises to stay in touch, life got in the way. Due to the gap created by the distance, their daily communications gradually became infrequent, and eventually, they grew apart and lost contact while pursuing their various careers in life. Heartbroken over Esther's sudden departure to the city and left incommunicado, Bright sought a fresh start and planned to travel abroad. Determined to build a future and escape the painful memories of losing Esther, Bright finally left the shores of Nigeria to the United States. Over the years, he became a graduate from one of the prestigious universities in the United States. However, despite his academic success and rising prospects, Bright found it difficult to shake the feeling of emptiness that lingered within him. Bright traveled often for work. He flew from one international project to the next, but deep down, he longed for the simple days of his childhood in Umuagu, when he and Esther had made their sacred promise. But those days seemed like a distant memory, one he could never fully reclaim. Every achievement, every new experience seemed meaningless to him, as if something vital was missing. This feeling intensified during quiet moments, when he would recall his vow with Esther, the promise they had made to each other. Whenever he tried to move forward romantically, his thoughts would be consumed by Esther and the mysterious vow they had made. He had always believed that they would marry, that they would build a life together, but as time passed, the reality of their separation weighed heavily on him. The more he tried to move on from the past and pursue relationships with other women, the more he realized that he could not fall in love with any other. One evening, Bright had a romantic dinner with a very beautiful woman but was distant all through the dinner and could not connect with her, no matter how much he tried. That same night, he had nightmares. In his dreams, he found himself surrounded by shadowy figures, chasing him. The more Bright tried to move on romantically, the more the dreams and the nightmares. At times, he would wake up in a cold sweat, his heart racing, only to find that the haunting presence of the shadowy figures lingered in the edges of his consciousness. He tried to ignore the feelings, attributing them to work stress and the pressures of his new life, but deep down, he knew something more profound was at work. Once more, he made an attempt to be intimate with another woman and he had a very terrible nightmare. Bright woke up in the middle of a dream to find his room engulfed by strange feeling, the air thick with negative energy. He had seen the figures of the masquerades standing at the foot of his bed, their eyes glowing. They did not speak, but he understood their message, a warning not to break a sacred oath, for the consequences would be dreadful. He began to isolate himself a lot. In many cases, he would be physically present but mentally absent, his thoughts consumed by the oath and the reoccurring nightmares. Bright began to question the nature of their bond. Was it truly a simple childhood vow, or was something more spiritual at play, something beyond human understanding? He realized that, regardless of the years that had passed, his connection with Esther was unbreakable. While facing all these challenges, Bright received a message from his aged and lonely father, who told him that hence he refused to get married as his only son, he would get himself a companion, a wife, who would take care of him. Determined to stop his father from getting a wife at his age, after so many years without any and the thought of finding Esther, Bright resolved to return to Nigeria. Esther, on the other hand, was not spared from the nightmares either. As time passed and all the memory of her pact with Bright faded into the recesses of her mind, Esther decided to move on. She met a handsome man, Benson, who approached her with a warm smile. "You look so pretty and charming," he said, his deep voice both soothing and commanding. As Benson approached her, Esther was captivated not only by his words but by his handsomeness and confidence. Esther, initially taken aback by his attention, managed a polite response. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and Esther found herself drawn to his charisma and genuine interest in her. Though she initially resisted his advances, wary of her past promise, Benson's persistence won her over. Over time, Benson's thoughtful gestures and unwavering support broke down her guarded demeanor. It wasn't long before she realized she looked forward to his visits and presence, feeling a sense of safety and warmth she hadn't experienced in years. They began a serious relationship, but Esther made it clear she would only submit her body to him only after marriage. Impressed by her virtue, Benson decided to visit her family to formally introduce himself and make his intentions to marry Esther known. However, trouble began soon after Benson's visit. Suddenly, Esther started having recurring nightmares. In her dreams, she and Benson would be running through a dense, shadowy forest, being chased by fearsome masquerades. The relentless pursuit felt like an accusation, as though the masquerades were guardians of an ancient covenant, sent to enforce a promise she had long forgotten. Each dream left her trembling, the weight of her oath pressing heavily on her mind, even as she struggled to comprehend the full meaning of these haunting visions. The dreams left her trembling and anxious, but she brushed it off, classifying it as ordinary dreams, and she concluded that her mind was playing tricks on her. The day of their traditional marriage arrived, and the family compound buzzed with excitement. But at the middle of the ceremony, Esther disappeared without a trace. Benson was furious and felt his family had been humiliated, and the marriage was called off. Mr. Samuel, Esther's father, could not believe the humiliation that brought on his family. Anger was written all his face. When he questioned Esther's friend, she seemed to also know nothing about Esther's whereabout. Hours later, Esther returned, with sadness written all over her face. Her father furiously roared, "What have you done, Esther? Why disgrace us like this?" But Esther, unable to explain, could only mumble, "I don't know why I ran. Something just pushed me." Months passed, and another suitor came, calling. He was kind and well-to-do, and Esther's parents were hopeful. But just like before, the nightmares returned, and on the day of the marriage, Esther vanished again. This pattern repeated itself with every suitor who came her way. Her parents grew desperate. Her mother, convinced she was possessed by an Obanji spirit, sought help from the shrine of Umuagu village. She visited the shrine, appeased the gods, and pleaded for them to free her daughter to get married. Esther, who was advised by her parents, also visited the shrine herself and prayed as well. A ritual was conducted, and they assured her that she was free from the Obanji spirit and could get married henceforth. But not long from that day, another suitor came, and the story remained unchanged, as Esther disappeared once again. At that point, Esther's father consulted the chief priest of Umuagu shrine. The chief priest, clad in flowing red robes adorned with cowrie shells and feathers, performed a series of intricate rituals. Finally, after minutes of solemn chanting and communion with the gods, he declared in a voice filled with certainty, "Esther's troubles are not caused by an Obanji spirit but a binding blood oath she entered into years ago. She made a covenant with a boy named Bright," the chief priest revealed. "They vowed to remain pure for each other until marriage. Breaking that oath will bring severe consequences. The boy is suffering the same fate wherever he is." Esther's father was stunned. He explained that Esther had long lost contact with Bright and had no idea if he was even alive or not. The chief priest assured them that Bright was alive but also tormented by the same curse. Then he offered a solution. Esther must deeply fall in love with her next suitor and agree to marry him. She should ensure her virginity remained intact until their marriage rites were fully completed. If she accepts her next suitor no matter his appearance, it is only then will the gods show their wisdom and free her from the curse. Soon after, an elderly widower named Chief John expressed his interest in Esther. He was wealthy and kind, but his age made Esther recoil in horror. However, when the news got to Mr. Samuel, her father, he urged Esther to comply and accept the old man. "The gods have spoken," he said. "You must fall in love with this man to break the curse." Reluctantly, Esther agreed, forcing herself to accept the situation. Marriage introduction followed, and Esther was engaged to marry Chief John, who was even older than Esther's father. As fate would have it, Bright returned from abroad the same week the engagement took place. Upon his return, Bright's sense of duty and honor toward his oath was further tested when he met a young beautiful woman named Z. She was kind, intelligent, and everything he could have hoped for in a partner. He drove around the city with Z and spent time together. But when Bright took Z to his place, yet, despite Z's beauty and the growing attraction he felt toward her, Bright found himself unable to connect with Z on a deeper level. That was when he came to the conclusion that his heart belonged to Esther, and no matter how hard he tried to move on, he couldn't escape the weight of his promise. A few days after his arrival the country, Bright drove from the city to see his father in Umuagu, his hometown. It was a long trip, and after so many hours of diving, Bright finally got to Umuagu town, and the childhood memories of him and Esther overshadowed his thoughts. He was happy to see his father after so many years of being away, and Chief John felt the same. They chatted with smiles all over their faces. Bright then reminded his father that he could not have a serious relationship while living abroad because of his childhood love, who he could not stop take off his mind no matter how he tried to move on. Chief John assured him that all would be well, now that he had returned home. He further promised to assist him search for the girl so that he could get closure and move on. When Chief John later shared his plans to marry a young beautiful woman that he had already engaged, Bright was furiously angry. Confusion and disbelief moved within him, his mind racing with questions he could not voice. How could his father, a man he had always seen as wise and rational, decide on such an impulsive course of action? Anger burned in his chest as he thought about how ridiculous the situation was. "Why would you even consider this?" Bright demanded, his voice clear with frustration. He felt betrayed, unable to understand how his father could entertain such an idea. And his heart sank at the thought of what this would mean for their family dynamic. Yet beneath the anger, there was a deep thought about the identity of the young woman who had somehow captured his father's interest. "Father, you don't need a wife at your age," he argued. But Chief John insisted and convinced Bright to calm down until he sees the beautiful damsel he fell in love with. The next day, Chief John brought Esther home. Upon their arrival, Esther was stunned to see Bright. Her heart pounded, and her breath caught in her throat. Bright, too, froze in disbelief, his eyes scanning her face as if to confirm the impossible. "Esther," he whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of shock and wonder. Memories flooded back for both of them. Stolen moments of their past, the laughter that had once been their shared language, and the solemn vow they made. "Is this you?" Esther was none other than her childhood love, the girl with whom he had shared dreams, laughter, and the unbreakable oath that had bound their fates. "Bright, what are you doing here?" Esther questioned. Chief John was speechless at that very moment and could not figure out what was happening. When he finally heard their story, he was overwhelmed by the divine coincidence, and he took a moment to process the astonishing revelation. "It seems the gods have truly orchestrated this," he murmured. But Bright was not too excited, as he felt betrayed that Esther had broken their vow, and to complicate the issue more, she chose to do that with his own father. "So Esther, you finally broke our vow, with my father?" he asked, his face filled with sadness. Esther tried all her best to explain to him what happened and that Chief John had never been intimate with her. She assured him that she only agreed to marry Chief John to break the curse that was following her. Bright was not convinced of Esther's explanation, but she continued urging him to see reasons with her. As the matter unfolded, Chief John later spoke to Bright, confirming all that Esther said. That was the moment. Bright hugged Esther and they sat down. After a long pause, Chief John smiled warmly and gazing at Esther and Bright, studying their faces as emotions, disbelief, and relief played across them, he said, "You were always meant to be together. You have my blessing. May your union bring the peace and fulfillment the gods wished for you." The news got to Esther's father, Mr. Samuel, and he immediately took Esther and Bright to the chief priest. The chief priest confirmed that their reunion was orchestrated by the gods. As the both knelt before him, he laid hands on them. "The bond you share is unbreakable," he declared. "Your union will now bring peace to both of you." As he laid hands, he blessed them. He further assured them that they would have a fruitful marriage. Afterwards, Esther and Bright rekindled their relationship and were so much in love and happier more than their former. A few months later, Esther and Bright got married and many cherished their love story. It was the night of their marriage that they finally shared an intimate moment. They fulfilled their oath, remaining virgins until their marriage night, a moment that solidified not only their love but also their commitment to the gods. A few months after their marriage, Esther became pregnant, leaving them dancing and celebrating their pregnancy and reunion. They could not hold back on their excitement as they celebrated with some friends. Esther later gave birth to twin babies, a boy and a girl, a moment that seemed to illuminate their entire home with boundless joy. As she held her babies for the first time, a cascade of emotions overwhelmed her. Looking back to where they started and the challenges they faced, gratitude, love, and a profound sense of fulfillment took over her thoughts. The twins were named Uchechukwu, symbolizing God's will, and Oluchukwu, meaning God's doing. And it was indeed the gods that brought them back together. Each name carried deep significance, a reflection of their journey and the divine interventions that had reunited both of them. Their home was filled with the joy of a family finally at peace. The story of Esther and Bright became a testament to the power of love, faith, and destiny. It also highlights the importance of honoring promises and commitments. Esther and Bright's pact, made in their youth, shaped their destinies and teaches the value of keeping one's word. The story equally encourages belief in the unseen forces and connections that guide our lives, whether through ancestral spirits, fate, or divine intervention. And so, they lived happily ever after. Please kindly support this channel by hitting the subscribe button for more interesting African folk tale stories. and turn on the notification bell to be notified when next we publish another story. Don't forget to like and share. Thank you for watching.